Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us today as we continue our exciting seminar series. I am Dr. Carlos Bosquez, CEO at the Food Allergy Science Initiative, or FOSSI for short, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's discussion. Today, I have the pleasure to be joined by Dr. David Golden, who is a scientific advisory board member at Aquestive Therapeutics, and Dr. Golden will be discussing about the development of sublingual epinephrine products. At FOSSI, our focus is to understand and intervene with food allergies. And as a leader of food allergy research, FOSSI is dedicated to advancing the science to transform the lives of people living with food allergies. While food allergies impact millions of people across the world, understanding the disease and the availability of effective treatments remain a limitation. Before we start, I want to remind our audience of our special 10-year anniversary celebration. I hope you can join us at FOSSI 10, which will be celebrated in October 6 through 7, 2016, 2026, I should say, at the Broad Institute in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Join us to celebrate 10 years of food allergy research and innovation. And if you like to register, you can use this QR code to help in the registration. This is the event of the year when it comes to food allergies and innovative science. So I really hope that you can all join us. Well, I hope you have been enjoying the discussions that we've been having with the great exciting lineup of speakers that we've put together over the last year. Throughout this series, we have been discussing with experts in the field about emerging therapies and examining the challenges and success in recent clinical trials. Today is actually our second to last webinar of the year, and whether you're a patient, a clinician, a researcher, or just curious about food allergies, we really hope these seminars are providing helpful information to you and your family. Before we begin, I would like to clarify that FOSSI is a science-driven and evidence-based organization, and therefore, throughout this series, our intent is not to promote any product or companies, but instead to inform our audience on recent clinical development efforts for food allergies, and also to give you the opportunity to ask questions to better understand the benefits and the challenges of the different emerging options. So today I am very thrilled to be joined by Dr. David Golden. Dr. David Golden is a scientific advisory board member at Aquestive Therapeutics. He did his medical training at McGill University and his allergy immunology fellowship at Johns Hopkins University, where he is an associate professor of medicine. Dr. Golden has directed research studies on insect sting allergy and anaphylaxis for over 30 years at Johns Hopkins. And he is a former co-chair and current member of the Joint Task Force on Practice Parameters for Food Allergy. Dr. Golden established an acclaimed private group practice in Baltimore, and he served as a division chief for allergy and immunology at Sinai Hospital of Baltimore and Franklin Square Hospital in Baltimore. So it is really an honor to have you here, Dr. Golden. So much that we can learn from you, and a lot to be discussed today, but really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. My pleasure.
I want to remind our audience before we start that we'll be taking questions from our Q&A box, and please feel free to provide any questions. We'll be compiling those and discussing those during the Q&A. Really excited, Dr. Golden, that you'll be talking about what you've been calling dissolving the fear, the era of sublingual epinephrine. I'm very excited about this topic as I know it's very highly innovative in food allergies.
Yes, thank you. And before we go on, let me just make a quick comment because I didn't notice it earlier, but in the introduction, it mentioned the Joint Task Force on Practice Parameters, which is a joint task force of the American College and American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. But it's the Joint Task Force on Allergy Parameters for all allergy parameters, not just food allergy. Hadn't noticed that. But it's a good opportunity for me to point out that of the many practice parameters that we develop and publish with hopefully practice changing recommendations, we are in the midst of developing a new and very exciting practice parameter on food allergy, which will hopefully be published in 2027. So we can all look forward to that.
We will all be looking forward to that. That would be very helpful, especially as things evolve in food allergies. I'm really glad to hear about that initiative. Well, Dr. Golden, I always, you've done a lot in the food allergy space for many years, for over 3 decades or more. And I always ask our speakers to give a little more background of why you do what you do and how did you get here? What was your motivation to work in this space?
Ah, so many things. Well, for starters, um, I have allergies. And as a child getting immunotherapy, allergy shots, I was really inspired by my childhood allergist who landed up being one of my major mentors. Yeah, he invited me to just sit in one summer and see everything he does, including his research seminars. So that was really inspiring and was probably the main thing that set me in that direction. Uh, and actually, as we go into this, let me take the opportunity. We'll go back and forth uh, to bring up these slides because it will. Um, oh, lost it. Let me try that again.
Yeah.
Uh, where did it go? All right, I will work on bringing that back.
Take your time, no worries.
Give me one
I think
second
you
here.
want to share your screen.
Yeah, well, we're going to want to do that, and it will make things much easier right now, but I seem to have lost that. It's coming back, hopefully, right now. Oh, screen sharing is not starting, but we are going to need the slides. So let me reinitiate it and see if it works. There we go. Um,
Perfect.
okay. And I wanted to bring it up just because I can use this slide to to tell you how I got to where I am after all these years. And it all started as an allergy fellow when I went to train in allergy at Johns Hopkins, which is I would gladly have stayed in Montreal actually with my mentors there, but they said, no, no, you need to go to Johns Hopkins. So I did. I was always most interested in immunotherapy and the immunology of immunotherapy. I had my own notions of how allergy shots work. So there I was at Johns Hopkins as a junior allergy fellow. And knowing my interests, the chief of the division suggested that I get involved in the very active research project on a new form of immunotherapy, allergy shots for bee sting allergies. Well, the problem was that one day that summer, the beekeeper who was supplying us with the insects, because we were stinging people. That's what we did. We sting people with bees and yellow jackets. He didn't show up. All our patients are waiting in the clinic with their IVs and very excited, I'm sure, about their stings. The beekeeper didn't show up. So the study coordinator and I were out in the courtyard with donuts and sodas, waiting for the bees, which did arrive. We had a net, and the rest is history. We did catch the insects. We did sting the patients. All of this led me into many years of very fascinating research on how we can help our patients with anaphylaxis to bee stings, and that led me in turn to become more of an expert on epinephrine, which is where we are today. And after many years of research on insect allergy, we're still working on the research. We just had a meeting last night actually on our updated insect allergy practice parameter. So still working on that. But in recent years, I've really been focusing on epinephrine. There are so many exciting advances in the field and improved understanding. We'll talk today a little bit about how all of these development studies in the field with epinephrine have helped us to go so much further in understanding epinephrine and anaphylaxis.
That is fascinating. That sounds like an interesting research. These things, and interesting and painful research at the same time, but very exciting how you got there. For Dr. Golden, I know that one of the main goals for today's discussion, it's really talking about Anafilm and the new epinephrine sublingual product to better understand this. Can you tell us a little bit more when you and the team at Aquestive started working on this? What was the major unmet need, and what is the product? Why you decided to develop this, and
Mm,
what was the goal to develop Anafilm?
sure. Let me go back to the slides. Um, you know, there's so many unmet needs. This is where it all started when I was first entering practice. This was the only epinephrine on the market, a preloaded syringe and needle. And you'll notice there's some chewable antihistamines there and a little tourniquet to wrap around your arm or leg. This was clearly geared towards the insect allergy. In fact, back then, and we're talking about the 70s and 80s, food allergy was, I don't know how to describe it, kind of um, I can't think of a good word. It just, there was no focus at all on food allergy. It was, frankly, my mentors, God bless them, viewed food allergy as, in the field of allergy, food allergy was witchcraft.
Yeah.
And that,
And
that just shows you how poor our understanding was of food allergy. It was my honor to actually know Charlie May and Alan Bach when he went to Denver, and they really brought food allergy into the mainstream of anaphylaxis and immunology. It wasn't until 1987, believe it or not, that the auto-injector appeared, and it was supposed to solve all the problems. Everybody could carry it around, use it easily, and everybody would be able to treat their anaphylaxis before calling 911, and that should solve all the problems. Well, it was a huge step forward, but it did not solve all the problems. And we'll go through some of those, but the need centers on time, among many things. Anaphylaxis is a rapid onset, life-threatening, potentially life-threatening allergic reaction requiring immediate treatment. And the rapid onset, the immediate treatment, these are strong words, and there's a reason. If you look at how anaphylaxis develops, it builds up very quickly over 5, 10, 15 minutes. If you don't treat it in those first 10 to 20 minutes, then the horse is out of the barn, so to speak. You can't possibly really expect to catch up and control it if you wait too long. That's really the biggest problem, because it's one of the problems with this and this is they have a needle. That's one of the problems we have. In other words, people don't love using needles, let's face it. And during anaphylaxis, one of the most common problems, mistakes that people make is to say, well, I'll just wait and see if I get worse. And that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make. The second biggest would be, oh, I'll just take an antihistamine, that'll take care of it. Because by the time you realize that it is getting worse and the antihistamine isn't working, now you're over the top of that curve. It's too late. I mean, it's never too late, but those are huge problems. Why don't people, and people don't, some, as it says here, close to 80%, when you look at all the published studies, they all actually say very nearly the same thing. Close to 80% of people who should use epinephrine for anaphylaxis don't use it when they should. When you go into why that is, it's all of these things. It's I'm afraid of the needle. I wasn't sure how to use it. I wasn't sure if I needed it. I thought I would just wait longer. I would take an anti. All of these different reasons. We need to correct all those things. So the goal for Aquestive and others was to at least attack one or more of those problems. Number one being the needle. If people weren't as afraid to use it, first of all, they would more likely use it. And almost as important, they would use it early
Mhm.
rather than saying, I'll just wait and see because I don't really want to use this needle. If they could just pop it under their tongue, they might do that at 5 or 10 minutes instead of waiting and landing. If you wait longer, the longer you wait, the less it works. That's the thing about epinephrine. So that's if they wait even an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes, the epinephrine doesn't work as well. The result is delaying use of epinephrine leads to more need for extra doses of epinephrine, more emergency room visits, more hospitalizations, more ICU visits, more intubations, all the things we're trying to prevent. So it's not just use epinephrine, it's use it early.
Mhm.
And then that ties into, am I really having anaphylaxis? I don't know. So we'll
Mhm.
talk a bit more about some of these things because they're really at the core of not just developing a new product, but getting people to understand and treat anaphylaxis in the most effective way. So, what kind of epinephrine, what epinephrine works the best? Well, the only epinephrine that works is the one that people will carry always and will use rapidly and easily as soon as the reaction begins. And if they feel that uh, auto injector fits the bill for them, perfect. That's what they should have. If they prefer a nose spray or a sublingual form or anything else that comes on the market that fits their needs, that will help them to use it, as it says here, carry it, use it quickly. That's what they need. That's what we all need to have, and that's what's really the goal of developing Anafilm, which, as you see, is highly portable. The film itself is the size of, smaller than most postage stamps, actually. So this portability, carrying it always, like I said, this really addresses one of those problems. We can talk more about the rapid action, but being able to carry it and use it quickly and have it work quickly really are the goals of the development program at Aquestive.
That is fantastic. 25 minutes, it's a short period of time when you're going through that. So I can appreciate. Ideally, obviously, we would the ideal case would be you don't even need to use it, right, and so that way the time becomes infinite. But being able to attack it earlier and simplifying
Mm,
the process and the decision making and making the decision easier for the person, it makes perfect sense. So tell us more, David, about what is it? What is Anafilm? How
mm.
was it made? How was it built? And explain, it sounds simple, right? A film, but can you tell us a little bit more exactly what it is and how was it developed?
Sure. It does sound simple. It is not simple. But first of all, why haven't we had these new forms of epinephrine 10, 20, 30 years ago? There's a reason. Um, the epinephrine is its own worst enemy, so to speak. Uh, the nature of epinephrine is that it's a vasoconstrictor. So it reduces blood flow. Dentists love epinephrine. Surgeons love epinephrine because when they use it at the site, it limits the blood flow so they have a nice blood-free field to work in. But if you want to give someone epinephrine, wherever you put it, it's going to constrict the blood vessels and prevent its own absorption. Ah, okay, problem number one. Now, that's a problem even with injections. It's really interesting what we've learned in the past few years. But if you put it in your nose or you put it under your tongue, how is it going to work if it's not going to get absorbed? The esteemed Estelle Simons, one of the leaders in our field, the late Estelle Simons, actually tried this 30 years ago and published a lot of really interesting data. But in the end, as she said, no one's going to use this because it tastes terrible and it stings and it doesn't get absorbed and you have to use 20 sprays in your mouth. And she was right. It took 30 years of development in technology to get to where we are. So let me see if I can explain that a little bit better as far as the development of Anafilm. Um, so Anafilm, the design of Anafilm combines three main components, if you will. There's a prodrug. So this is one of the biggest things. Epinephrine Like I said, it constricts blood vessels, it prevents its own absorption. But a prodrug doesn't, it's not active. So dibutepinephrine has no activity. So when you apply it to under the tongue, let's say, it gets absorbed. It doesn't prevent its own absorption. As soon as it hits the circulation, it is broken down immediately into active epinephrine. But by then it's in the circulation. So that's fine. That's where we want it. So we solved one problem by this prodrug, and there's a lot of work went into that. There are many prodrugs of epinephrine. This had the performance characteristics that they were looking for. So that is one way of making sure it gets absorbed. Number two, it has a permeation enhancer, permeability. It's a common product that's used, if you look at the bottom of the slide, a component of food grade clove oil. It's used in other fields. It has a funny tingle to it, which people will notice when they use the anafilm. So the combination of using a prodrug and the permeation enhancer, and then we get into the actual film itself, which is a marvel of engineering, because it has to release the drug it has to hold the drug and then dissolve and release the drug in a way that it gets absorbed properly. So the design of that film was a whole nother area. So it's a polymer matrix based film that is used in other products. This was not a new development just for this product. So there is experience and products worldwide that uses this pharma film technology. And the prodrug, which converts in seconds to epinephrine and can be easily applied and rapidly. It's mucoadhesive. So when you stick it under your tongue, it kind of settles there. It sticks there. It's not going to float all over your mouth. Dissolves quickly. So that's the technology. How does it work? How is it developed? And how does it work? It's this amazing film that incorporates this prodrug so they can get absorbed and enter the system as live epinephrine.
This is drug development at its best, right? Everything seems simple. You put up an effort and does it work the same way, but it's not, right? And you have to deal with the synchronicity of how do you get it there, make sure you don't get the vasoconstriction to enable the drug to travel and be in the system. So fascinating, and nothing is simple when it comes to, and it shouldn't be, right, when it comes
Right.
to treating patients, and it just needs so much thought. So I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing to enable this new product. um, so I think the big question is, s- the hypothesis made sense, right? You need to go and act early, and also lower the barrier for people to adapt to use something that enable them to be treated early in the process. Now the question is, how does it work? Does it work
Mm,
it's the same way as others? What are the challenges and what are the benefits of Anafilm versus
mm.
the auto injector and the nasal spray? Is there data that you can share with our audience, especially clinical data that can address those types of questions?
Sure, and I'd be happy to. It's really a very difficult question to answer in a sense, not just from our point of view, but from the FDA's point of view. When you ask, that's all this theory sounds great, but how do we know it works? Well, that's exactly the question that gets asked when you want to get a new product approved. How do we know it works? Well, the problem with epinephrine treatment of anaphylaxis is when you think of all drug approvals, new drug approvals, how do you get a new drug approved? You do pivotal trials, clinical trials, and they are always going to be randomized, placebo-controlled trials. That's the gold standard of getting a new drug product approved. Well, it's long been considered impractical and infeasible to do a placebo-controlled trial of epinephrine for anaphylaxis because it just doesn't seem right to say, oh, we'll give you this placebo instead of epinephrine and see what happens. So what do you do? And that problem was addressed by the FDA with an alternative pathway that is being used in this area for the first time. That is to say, well, if we can't prove it works by against placebo, can we establish that it shows the same characteristics as approved products in other ways? Does it get absorbed into the system the same way? Does it have the same effects on the system? Those are the surrogate markers, which is exactly what they want done, and that's exactly how it was done with the nasal spray, and now with Anafilm, and in the future perhaps with other epinephrine products for anaphylaxis. That leads us to things called pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, which are these characteristics I was just saying, meaning how do we know that it's getting into the system, and how do we know it's having the desired effects? So the clinical program, development program, involved many things. The pivotal trial is not placebo controlled. It's examined the pharmacokinetics, meaning how it gets into the system, the peak concentration, the Tmax, the time it takes to get into the system, the exposure to the drug, and how it affects the system. That's pharmacodynamics, measuring the blood pressure and heart rate to prove that it's actually doing what you expect from epinephrine, and comparing it with existing products. For example, comparing it with an auto-injector, comparing it with manual intramuscular injection by syringe and needle, because those are FDA-approved products. We know they work. We have 30 years of experience with them or more. And if we can show that a new product is similar to those products in these characteristics, then why wouldn't it work? So that's the 505(b)(2) pathway, called bracketing. If we wanted this new product to be bracketed in between, in the same range as existing products. How do we know it works in real world? I will come back to, in a few minutes. That's what we call the OASIS study, which I'll explain. And lastly, we may not touch much on the pediatrics. It's just an extension of the clinical program to move it forward into younger and younger children with appropriate dosing and appropriate evidence. So that's the program, and I'm going to run through just a little bit of that. Okay. So pharmacokinetics. How do we prove that it's working, like you said? Well, first it has to get into the system. So this is a typical PK curve. It shows the epinephrine building up rapidly. And the time scale here is huge, actually. It's 3 hours. What we really want to look at is this box in the first 60 minutes. So it's expanded up here, and we can look at it more carefully. But if you look at the big picture here, you see epinephrine building up quickly, and then it gradually comes down back towards baseline. That's a pharmacokinetic curve. How high does it need to go? That's the Cmax, the concentration that it needs to get to. And first of all, we don't really know, tell you the truth. What's the therapeutic concentration for epinephrine? How high does it get to work? We see numbers here in picograms, 100, 200, 300 picograms per mil concentration. There is some evidence, old evidence, and very little of it, that 50 to 100 picograms is about where it starts to really work. And I'm going to show you why we do believe that that's true. So actually, although the maximum concentration may be 2 or 3 or 500, what really matters is how quickly can it build up to the concentrations that work. We'll come back to that in a moment. That was the Cmax, the concentration. The Tmax, the time, how long does it take to get to the highest concentration? So on that green curve, for example, which is Anafilm, you see it building up very rapidly. The peak of the curve, the Cmax, in fact, if you look at the inset, you can really see here that the Cmax for Anafilm in this particular study was 12 minutes. The Cmax, the Cmax for these auto-injectors, although it does have a nice early peak here at 8 or 10 minutes, the actual Cmax was out here at 30 minutes for the auto-injectors and at 45 to 50 minutes for the intramuscular manual injection, which seems kind of weird, doesn't it? That it takes so long to build up, and yet I just said it works, and it does. Clinical evidence is that well, Anafilm is not yet approved, but the auto-injectors and the manual syringe and needle, even though those curves look so different, they both, when you look at studies on how many patients needed a second dose, the answer is about 10%, regardless of which kind they used. So the manual syringe and needle, the black line here, which doesn't look so great, had the same 90% success rate with the first injection as these rapid building up types of epinephrine, which again emphasizes that anything that's in this range, that's at least as good as the black line, should be effective. It's what we're looking for. It's at least as good as the manual syringe and needle, back to that bracketing concept. On the right side, we're actually looking at that Tmax, the time that it takes to build up to the highest level. And the interesting thing about Anafilm at the top here is not only that it was very fast, but it's a very tight, there's not a wide range there. It's a very tight range. A lot less variability in how quickly this builds up in different studies in different people. So this is this is actually a paper that was published very recently, even though these are the data that were presented to the FDA and in discussion with the FDA. So that's the pharmacokinetics, but let's go back to your question. How do we know it works? Okay, so it's there, it's in the bloodstream. Is that good enough? Not advancing, let's see. Okay. This just shows the comparability, that bracketing concept, that the Anafilm in green was in between and in the range of existing products, as I was showing you. But the pharmacodynamics, here we're looking at blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, and heart rate. All right, same study. Okay, what happened? Well, the blood pressure, systolic blood pressure goes up very quickly. Interesting that it went up more than the intramuscular forms. And this is something we didn't really understand until recent years of development programs of these new products, not just Anafilm. We're seeing this across the board in nasal sprays, mucosal application. It turns out there's some interesting differences whether you inject it into a muscle where there's a different array of adrenergic receptors, alpha and beta receptors that respond to epinephrine, than if you put it in the mucosa or in the circulation. So it turns out that by applying it to the mucosa, it actually it actually has a more rapid effect in the system. But even more interesting to us was how relatively little effect. You would think that you give someone epinephrine, the blood pressure is going to shoot up, and especially the diastolic blood pressure, it actually goes down with intramuscular epinephrine. And this has been shown and published with the nasal spray as well. But with mucosal application, like Anafilm or nasal spray, the diastolic blood pressure goes up. It's a long explanation about the physiology of the adrenergic receptors in skeletal muscle versus other tissues, but there's a rationale that's been developed as to why that is. And we hope and expect it can lead to better treatments with these newer products because it gives a better MAP, mean arterial pressure. When you go into shock, like with anaphylaxis, the problem is that you're not perfusing your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, all those vital organs. The mean arterial pressure is what does the job. You can shoot up the systolic blood pressure, but if the diastolic blood pressure goes down, then your mean arterial pressure is not really going up that much. You won't perfuse those organs as well. So the whole idea here that these newer products actually increase diastolic blood pressure and systolic blood pressure gives us hope that they're actually going to work faster and better than intramuscular epinephrine. I said hope. All of this is still needing to be observed and proven in a lot of clinical research that has yet to be done. The heart rate also goes up very quickly. So the other thing I wanted to point out real quickly here, because we were just talking about it, is how fast does it work? So look at the blood pressure. It goes up in literally 1 to 2 minutes, actually. And same with the heart rate, which actually goes up even faster. Same thing was shown with the nasal spray, frankly. So I'm not going to say that there's a big difference here. The point is that I think I should go back a slide or two, because let's go back to this inset here. You just saw the blood pressure and pulse going up way early here at the 1 to 2 minute mark, while the concentration is just getting ready to go up. And this supports what I was saying, is that as soon as these concentrations get into this maybe 50 picogram range, it actually starts to work. It doesn't have to shoot way up to the top of the curve. Which is why the manual syringe and needle, this black line, seems to work just fine. It gets to where it needs to be quickly. It takes a long time getting the rest of it into your system, but it still works. So a lot of things that we've been learning from these developmental programs. It says here these changes are observed within 10 minutes. We're actually looking at more detailed data, and I believe we're going to be able to say that they actually start to go up within 2 minutes. So that gets to how does it work and how do we know it works. I'll come back to a little bit more about that, but is it safe? Is epinephrine safe? And that's an important question, because that's one of those other factors that people worry about. Oh, I'll just wait and see if I get worse. Oh, I don't want to use epinephrine, it's dangerous. It's not dangerous. It's actually a remarkably safe drug. It has a wide therapeutic range between 50 picograms and at least 2,000 picograms. The adverse effects are on target, meaning that when you give someone epinephrine, they might get a little jittery, they might feel their heart race, they might get a headache. Those are the expected effects of epinephrine. If it wasn't doing that, we would be afraid it wasn't working. So those are side effects, but they're expected. There were no unexpected side effects. There are local effects. I said it tingles, it might burn a little, it might taste bad, it might cause a little, they'll call it an ulceration. It's actually a superficial erosion, all of which is gone the next day or even shorter time. I would compare that, for example, with the local effects of giving an injection, where it might be painful, it might get sore, it might get swollen. These are local effects. These are not of concern unless they're really way out of line. So the safety profile across 11 clinical studies was really remarkably good. There are, a lot of the epinephrine gets swallowed, and it can be, or the drug does, and this is the nature, whether it's a nose spray or sublingual. There are some GI side effects, mild and, again, basically well tolerated. And again, I'll put it in perspective by saying, well, yes, you might get nauseous. There were a couple of people that actually had some delayed vomiting. But when we asked those people, would they rather have the needle or the film, with rare exception, they're going to say that they're not crazy about the needle. They'll take the side effects. Given that people have their own preferences, I totally understand that. That's why we need to have choices in the epinephrine market. I think that's one of the keys here. There's no one product that's the best product. They all work, and they all have advantages for certain people. We looked at a lot of different characteristics for scenarios, and definitely as far as, if you have to give a second dose, for example, is that going to be safe? We know that the level is going to go up even higher. After all, that's what we wanted to do. If someone's using a second dose, it's because they need it. They're not getting better with the first dose. But even there, the level really didn't go into a dangerous range in any way. And it was very brief. And even when we see the pulse and blood pressure go up, and someone might say, wow, that's really going up. Yeah, but actually it's going into the range that we see with exercise. These are not crazy high numbers. This is what happens to my blood pressure and yours, or your pulse, when you go up a couple of flights of stairs, for example. So lastly, how do we know it works? Well, this study that I'm going to show you was not designed to test whether it works, but it was a cool study. One of the many things that are of interest to all of us is whether there's anything that might interfere with the way a drug works. If it's a nose spray, what if your nose is blocked? If it's a sublingual film, what if you're having a reaction and your tongue is swollen? Is it going to work? What if you just ate a peanut butter sandwich and now you have to use this film under your tongue with all that gooey peanut butter? Is it going to work? Those studies have been done. So, uh, and it worked out fine, incidentally, even with the peanut butter. So, this was designed as the only thing that any of us and the FDA could figure out to address that question of what if you're having a reaction and your tongue is swollen? Is it going to work? Is it going to get absorbed properly? The best way to mimic that we could think of was in people who have oral allergy syndrome. That's where this OAS comes from. Oral allergy syndrome is where you're allergic to tree pollen or grass pollen or ragweed pollen, and you have seasonal hay fever. But when you eat an apple or a peach or a banana, you get itching in your mouth, itching in your throat, itching in your tongue. And normally you stop eating it. But if you keep eating it, you may get a swelling of your tongue or throat. That's so oral allergy syndrome. If we took those patients and had them eat the food and not stop eating it, and they actually get swelling of their tongue or throat, then we can test this hypothesis of whether the anafilm is still going to perform. So that's what this study
Mhm.
was. And it did. Despite the reaction going on in the mouth, mimicking an allergic reaction that was going on in the mouth, and some swelling, that what you're seeing here in the green line, first of all, is that PK, pharmacokinetic curve, which shows you pretty much the same thing you already saw. And when we compare in the box data with and without oral allergen challenge, OAC, you can see very comparable numbers. In fact, much like what we saw in the nose studies with the nasal spray and an allergen challenge, when you have an allergic reaction going on in the tissues, they actually absorb more of the drug. So the Cmax was higher with oral allergen challenge. The partial AUCs were a little higher, not significantly. They're in the same range. So yes, it does work as far as getting into the system. But as far as the symptoms, so now the blue line is the actual symptoms, the feeling of itching and swelling and the discomfort. Some of them actually develop systemic symptoms as well. And you see after, within 5 minutes, they're down to 50% of the symptoms, sorry. And it rapidly goes away. Within 15 to 20 minutes, the symptoms are all gone. Now,
This is fantastic data, David. I want to be able, I know we have very little
okay.
time, and I want to make
And
sure
I'm going
we
to
take
leave
at
it
least
at
one
that, I
question.
understand, and just say that although not shown here, in the lead up to the study, without the epinephrine, it actually took 74 minutes to go away. So, and this is systemic efficacy. So, this is just about easy to carry, easy to use, rapidly effective, and let's move on.
That's great. Great to see this to your point. Patients are different, everyone is different, and having optionality of treatment, it's always a good thing as long as the therapy works. So great data. Moving to just a few questions. I know before jumping to that, we always get this question of how can people help donate, host an event. Feel free to scan this QR code to follow us in social media and join our next webinar, which is going to be with Dr. Gideon Locke, what I know a lot of people are very interested about from his work in early introduction and tolerance for food allergies. So we'll take just a few quick questions. I think one of the first questions is I know the FDA has have shared some questions, some regulatory questions back to Aquestive, and it is the understanding general public those have been addressed. Can you share a little bit more light into those questions, if possible, from the FDA? And does that mean, do you expect a big delay on evaluating the final evaluation for approval for Aquestive, for Anafilm?
Yeah, right. Thanks. And I'll show this to help with that. We were actually happy, so to speak, relatively speaking, with the response because there were no concerns expressed at all about the product. a lot of the things I was just explaining to you were things that we wondered if they would question, does it go too high, whatever. No concerns about the product. There were some questions about the packaging and whether it could be improved, and the labeling, the instructions, could they be made clearer? So there were these are being worked on and should be easily addressed with additional human factor studies and minor improvements to the packaging, some adjustments of the instructions and labeling. Um, and there was a question about, what if it isn't placed exactly right in the mouth? What if you put it in the top of your mouth or on the top of your tongue? So some of those studies have actually already been done and looked pretty good, but there's going to be an additional, well, actually, they may or may not um, say that this needs to go forward. In just a few weeks from now, actually, we're expecting some feedback as to whether this last item, the additional PK study, needs to be done after review of studies that have already been done about placement in the mouth. But if so, it'll be done this summer. It'll be submitted early Q3. So this is all an unfortunate delay, but we're excited about the fact that there were no concerns that we see as being difficult in any way, and this should all be easily addressed and turned around later this year.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. I'll probably just take one more questions from the Q&A because I know we're over time, but are there any restrictions regarding temperature conditions such as heat, storage, for Anafilm?
Uh, not well. There's always restrictions. It actually is pretty forgiving. It's it can be frozen and thawed, and it'll work fine. It's stable. I forget the exact numbers, but it's been heat tested as far as stability in your hot car in the summer, for example, or carrying around on a hot day. It has a longer shelf life than the auto injector, so it's a pretty stable product that we're expecting approval at around a 30-month shelf life. So that should address that question. And I know that there were one or two other questions. The question of a beta blocker, for example, is there are some questions that are not product specific. They're general about epinephrine, and there is no difference in those respects with Anafilm or other existing products. They all have the same uh, levels of precautions, but not contraindications. There is no contraindication to the use of epinephrine, but we're always going to be a little more cautious in certain people who have underlying risk factors.
And is the dose the same for children and adults?
So, as with the auto injectors and nasal spray, there's a so-called adult dose, which is for those 30 kilograms and over. There's a so-called pediatric dose for the 15 to 30 kilogram range. Anafilm, the product that we hope and expect will be approved later this year will be the adult dose, but so that will include children of 30 kilograms and up. There is and will be, you saw me allude earlier to the pediatric study. So there's obviously development program in line to get dosing down, the dosing appropriate and approved down to the lowest ages possible, because that's what we need for the food allergy kids.
That is fantastic, David. Just to be respectful of everyone's time, I want to thank David for a great discussion. Really appreciated David just sharing all this information, getting more options that are reliable and safe
Mhm.
for the food allergy community. It's really crucial because we know everyone is different and having optionality. It's really important. So thank you to you for this conversation, and thanks to the people at Aquestive that are developing more products, and everyone that is out there developing products for this community. It's really important. So thank you, everyone, and thanks to the entire audience for all the great questions and thoughts today.
Thank you.